Uh, Welcome to the world famous Jiggy Jaguar radio broadcast. We are live coast to coast, border to border on iHeartRadio today, the Odyssey app, also available on AMFM, 247.com. 50 plus AM/FM stations across the country and around the world. And we start a busy segment here with our good, close, personal, longtime friend, Mr. Frank Vernuccio from USA Gov Policy. We also have along with us the amazing IQ al Rassooli and the always fun Dan Perkins. And so, Frank, I have got to have you retell that story you just told off air about the President Macron trying to get to the UN and the New York cops pulling him aside.
Yeah, well, this is UN week in New York, a week which every New Yorker dreads because it ties up traffic ad infinitum. And apparently, President Macron, the president of France, had his motorcade blocked off. He could not get to the UN in time. And so he decided to get out of the car and walk to the UN the last 30 minutes or so. The one problem is he had to pass numerous police checkpoints. And if you know New York City Police Department, you can imagine the conversation that took place on a street corner as the president of France attempted to proceed. He would say, "Officer, I am the president of France. You have to let me through." And I imagine the cop said to him, "Yeah, buddy, you're the president of France and I'm the king of Siam. Get moving before I arrest you." But eventually, all was well. President Macron did reach the UN, and he had time, I guess, to listen to President Trump's rather stem winder of a speech, in which he chastised the world body for actually not accomplishing very much at all. It was a great speech, and one I think that the UN delegates truly needed to hear.
So, Dan, what do you make of all this?
Uh, well, I think it's a great story, but it to me, in my suspicious mind, it doesn't ring true. I can't believe that he would get out of the car and on his own volition just walk without a dozen security guards around him, forming a protective shield for him. But I'll take the story. I also saw where Mr. Trump made a comment today that maybe the UN should move its building. Maybe it should just move out of the United States and go someplace else. And so I think in his speech today, I think if I remember correctly, he said has only gotten two things from the UN. A teleprompter that doesn't work was one of them, and an elevator or escalator that doesn't work either. So it's really a crazy situation, and I mentioned a story while we were off the air that Macron's wife is going to be testifying in a New York City court in the next few days, where there's some kind of a litigation, and she was prepared. She said to the news media she's prepared to prove both physically and scientifically that she really is a woman. And people don't want to see the pictures. They don't think they're going to be in the pictures, but then nobody wants to see the pictures. But so we have the prime minister who gets out of the car and walks to the UN, and his wife, who obviously wasn't with him, is worried about proving that she's a woman. And amazing.
So IQ, with all this going on, what do you make of all this? IQ, can you hear us, sir? I don't know if IQ can hear us. Okay, well, we will go back to Frank. So, Vernuccio, another thing that is going on is what is going on with air traffic control and some of the things that happened over the weekend and downing like the travel system.
Well, you spent the 4 years of the Biden administration doing absolutely nothing to make necessary maintenance and upgrades of our air control system.
Yeah.
And as a result, you see things starting to break down. This was actually somewhat remarkable. You had um, Pete Buttigieg, the transportation secretary who was responsible for this during the 4 years of the Biden administration, basically missing in action in almost every major crisis the nation faced, whether it was the uh, Palatine disaster, where the Secretary of Transportation apparently was not concerned enough to show up at the site, whether it was the period in which he decided to take several months of paternity leave and go out of the country on a European tour. We've had a 4 year vacuum of upgrades to our transportation system, particularly air control. And it's starting to come home now how behind the eight ball we truly are because of that.
So IQ, can you hear us now, my friend? It said that he was connecting to audio there on Zoom. Dan, what do you make of the air traffic control and everything?
Well, I absolutely agree with Frank. I don't travel as much as I used to, but I do travel mostly by air, and there always seems to be some kind of trouble, either with the airplane or traffic control, or they've got a backup. It's not as enjoyable of an experience that it used to be. The planes have gone from 2 rows of 2 to 2 rows of 3, so the seats have gotten smaller and closer. It's not as comfortable, and the prices are going up. But I guess we have to pay for our sins, and unfortunately, the Biden administration didn't pay anything for their sins, and they passed them on to us, and now we're trying to fix them, not only in air traffic control, but lots of other things. I think that it's important that people understand that these are very complicated airplanes in a very, especially in the New York area, complicated space, as is in Washington, D.C., with lots of planes going different directions and military bases. It's a very complex issue, and we didn't pay attention to it, and we moved on, and now Mr. Trump is trying to not only fix that, but a bunch of other things. I thought was interesting today that Mr. Trump decided he was not going to meet with the two New York Democrats on the budget bill, and I read a little bit about what the Democrats want, and the first item on the agenda, and you may have seen this, Frank, they want President Trump to allocate $1 trillion for health care and surgeries for illegals.
Yeah.
$1 trillion.
Absolute insanity. One of the interesting things is that the Democrat infrastructure bills never seems to go to infrastructure. And you really need a deep dive investigation to where all that money has been going. And I think we all know where a lot of it's been going. Whether it's the California rail system that never seems to come to fruition, in which it's billions of dollars over budget, whether it's the infrastructure bill that was passed by the Democrats during the Biden administration, and the money never seemed to go very much to infrastructure at all. And this money seems to have gone into a black pit. A lot of it perhaps went to NGOs and was a pass along to Democrat organizations and to Democrat causes, but never really going to the infrastructure where it was promised to go. Now, after all these billions or trillions have been allocated for infrastructure, none of it seems to have reached the mark of where it's supposed to go. We're paying the price. Let's talk about all those billions of dollars that were supposed to go, for example, to electrical stations for electric plug-in cars. And after billions of dollars being spent, I think there's something like 2 or 3 stations that were actually built. Well, those are pretty expensive refueling stations, if you ask me.
Right.
But we're starting to pay the price for all that.
And you're right. It's a situation where there was no accountability when those bills were proposed, and the Democrats voted in a block with no dissenting vote, and they had majority control when those were passed, and so the money's there, and as you said, It's not going to building roads and bridges and tunnels and airports and any of that stuff. It's going in the pockets of union people and draft. It's being drafted into private sector and political favorites of Joe Biden to line their pockets with the billions and billions of, if not trillions of dollars. I was glad to see that Trump canceled the meeting, and I think that the Democrats are trying to say, well, if we shut down the government, it'll be Trump's fault because he didn't give us what we want. And I am hoping that there is not going to be a $1 trillion commitment by the Republican Party to pay for medical care for illegal immigrants in the country. That's to start with. They want the Republican budget was an extra $20 million, $25 million for security for the Capitol for congressmen and senators, and Schumer wanted to increase it to 200 million. 200 million, 8 times what was original in the budget. And I just I don't see how the Democrats win. I really don't. What do you think, Frank?
Here's the problem. Why? I mean, I'm somewhat optimistic, but not totally. Let me tell you why. Unfortunately, Democrat voters, and I know I'm casting a wide net here, but I think I could speak for the majority of Democrat voters, don't vote for policy. They don't even vote for the candidate. They vote for the party. They vote for the D label. And I suspect in many jurisdictions throughout the country, you could put a combination of Genghis Khan and Bozo the Clown on the Democrat ticket, and that candidate would get a lot of votes simply because he's on the D line. And I think that's a real crisis in the country. And that's why you can't be overly optimistic. Now, in the case of this particular item, the $1 trillion for illegal alien medical care, it's going to depend on whether the press is even remotely honest on what this is all about. The press will say Trump is attempting to cut $1 trillion off medical care, period. They're not going to tell the other part of the story that it's $1 trillion of medical care for illegal aliens.
Right.
And it's going to be incumbent on the Republican administration, on the Republican Party, and on great shows like ours and Fox Network and so forth to get the real truth out there. Otherwise, the way the press is going to portray it, the way the Democrats will portray it, is that heartless Trump just killed $1 trillion worth of medical care that could have helped grandma get over her heart attack, etc. Not
Right.
telling at all that it's about illegal aliens.
Right. I heard this morning, I don't know whether you saw it, Frank, that they're now talking about the 2028 presidential campaign and that the Democrats have already picked their ticket. Gavin Newsom as president and AOC for vice president.
Well, I tell you what, guys, between the three of us, the four of us, if IQ comes on, I want to start a concession that we will produce the bumper stickers for the campaign in which it says, make New York like California, vote Democrat. I think we do pretty well with that particular item.
I think you're right. I think you're right.
So, Vernuccio, you've got a lot of things going on. Talk to us a little bit about some of the different things you've been working on this week.
Well, the news stories that came in today is, I think, rather fascinating. The Trump administration, I think, after having been rebuffed by Putin on its attempts to negotiate a peaceful settlement for Ukraine, is now taking what apparently is a much harder line. On Truth Social, the president stated that Ukraine can win its war completely, drive the Russians off its territory completely, and perhaps take a little bit more. That's a real major sea change for the Trump administration. I think it's a realization that Putin has absolutely no intention to compromise. And I think also it's a response by the Trump administration into Putin's assault on Estonian the skies, and the drones into Poland. I think it's a reaction to that as well.
As we were coming on, it just started on the air, I saw a flash come in that that Trump has suggested that he was going to be talking to NATO and the European Union about supplying more resources to Ukraine. And I suspected that he had that conversation before he put out the things that they could win it. Um, if he puts it sanctions on energy,
Yeah.
it affects the imports to India and China, with already expecting $750 billion in 3 years or more in the European Union. Putin's economy is going to shrink big time, and I wonder if he's willing to let that happen, Frank.
I think he is. I think now he is. Look, I hate to use the phrase nuclear option because it brings up other sorts of connotations, but the nuclear
Yes.
option has always been doing just that, putting the sanctions on Russian energy, which would sink the Russian economy. Russia, of course, has been called a gas station with nuclear weapons. That's
Mm-hmm.
all it really has to its economy. It's smaller than that of the state of Texas. And if, in fact, the energy sales go down for Russia, they are really in a bad place. The problem, of course, is Putin doesn't feel that there's an off ramp for him. He believes that if he lets this thing lose, that if he loses Ukraine, he loses his head too. And that's going to make it a rough period going into all this.
But he was as much a maniac that he might very well be willing to be able, he might be willing to sacrifice his head to try and win.
I don't think so. Because his ultimate goal is not Ukraine. Let's be blunt. Putin's ultimate goal is to rebuild the Soviet Union.
Right.
And I think if the Soviet Union, if Russia now becomes bankrupt, I think that's going to be the real problem. And I think that he is an old KGB guy. He doesn't understand negotiation at all. He understands subterfuge. He understands threats. And I think it's starting to dawn on him, or at least I hope it is. And I hope it does, that he's not going to win that way, that Donald Trump is a different type of character, and that NATO has metamorphosed into something a lot tougher. Look, he already wound up pushing Finland and Sweden into the arms of NATO. I think he's realizing that he's going to have to realize at some point his policy has been a disaster. And the best he can do is get the heck out of Dodge and withdraw from Ukraine.
Right. There's a story that, this morning I saw on one of the news channels, and they were talking about whether or not we're going to see a situation where America is going to get even stronger than it is now. As he said, it's the hottest economy in the world at the UN today, and he said that many times. But let me play a little game with you here, Frank. So the news media, the mainstream news media, or as we used to call it, the terrestrial media, is feeding out all kinds of stories about how Trump's approval rating is falling. And I suspect that there is some element of truth to that. And I'm not trying to be flippant with you. So what?
No.
He's not going to run again. So if he gets things done, even though some people don't like it, but if he gets things done going into the midterm and he wins the midterms big, and whoever's going to be the candidate in 2028, we have a situation where I think if since he doesn't have to worry about being reelected, all he has to do is think about making America great again. And if he does, he doesn't care about his ratings.
No, I think you're right. Absolutely. And I also think something else has to be brought into the equation too. Charlie Kirk. I think that there is a feeling among conservatives, particularly young conservatives, that they're not going to get pushed around any longer. They're not going to believe the media any longer. Look, we've had decades now where our leaders have been assassinated or they attempted to assassinate conservative leaders. We've seen our students pushed around on college campuses. We've seen our stories censored in the media. I think Charlie Kirk's assassination really brings that up to the fore. And I think a lot of people are really going to be compelled on the moderate and conservative side to come out to the ballot where maybe they were not so enthusiastic before. I think this is a different ball game, and I think you're going to see evidence of that in the 28 midterms, in the 26 midterms.
I tend to agree with you. I also think that what's going on right now is, and I'm a few days old, but the last number I saw was 72,000 inquiries into the headquarters about getting starting a club in a high school or colleges across the country. I also saw this morning there was a boost in people who are going into the election commissions and registering as Republicans.
Right.
And so I agree with you. I think that momentum is changing. And right now we have three parties in the country. We have independents, which are the largest, and then Republicans are second and Democrats are third and continuing to decline. Yet they still think they're going to win the midterm.
There's one other factor as well. The president has recently been making a major push to end all sorts of ballot misdeeds and fraud.
Right.
I think there is going to be a real chilling effect on the Democrats and their various election shenanigans. I don't think we're going to see a 3 o'clock in the morning box of ballots under the desk at an election site with thousands of ballots for Democrats. I think they realize that the eyes of the country are on them. And perhaps more importantly, the eyes of the Justice Department are on them. You're going to see, I think, in a number of jurisdictions, people taking a look at what went on in 2024 and understand that that's not going to happen again. That's going to help the Republicans substantially as well. It's going to help independents too. I think the independents are seeing that when they take a look, for example, at stories like just we were saying before, all this infrastructure money, which may have gone out to help bring independents to the ballot on the sides of the Democrats. Now they're saying, wait a minute, they got their money and they did nothing with it except line their own pockets.
Right.
That's going to help as well.
Yes, I agree. Do you think that it's right now there is not, as far as I can see, there is not a leader of the Democratic Party. There is
No, I think
there is not a person that the leaders in Congress, congressmen and senators, governors, that nobody is focusing on to lead them out of the darkness. The longer that goes without a central leader, is it not more difficult for them to recover?
yeah, it sure is. And in fact, the problem is not only that there's not a leader, but they've pushed their leaders out of the party. Look, you've got Joe Manchin, who would have been a powerful candidate for the Democrats in 2024. He's an independent now. You've got Fetterman, who's becoming increasingly alienated from the Democratic Party, although he's still a registered Democrat. You had Tulsi Gabbard, who's now in the Trump cabinet. So you're seeing a lot of these potential party leaders who have been pushed out of the Democrat Party.
Right. There's a little clip I saw yesterday, and it was kind of interesting. I kind of initially laughed at it, but the more I thought about it, the more I said, well, wait a minute, maybe that could happen. And that was, is it possible that Charlie's wife could be a Republican nominee for president?
Eventually, yes. In 2028, probably not.
Right. I agree. But I think she could. She's got tremendous poise. She's she handled the assassination of her husband in the same league as, if not a different league than Jacqueline Kennedy. And I just think that we'll see how if he's able to motivate, and what people were saying, Charlie brought in the guys, she's going to bring in the girls.
Yeah. Well said.
Yeah. So we've got Dan Perkins, Frank Vernuccio, IQ al Rassooli with us today. And
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I had a
IQ.
problem with the
Awesome.
computer. That's what happened, as usual.
As usual. So, in the remaining moments here before we let Frank go, we're going to just let you have the floor, my friend. Any questions or
Very kind of you.
comments to Vernuccio?
No, just a remark about Trump and the United Nations. He made an incredible speech. He told them off for what the truth. He gave them the truth. And the most important truth was he berated the European Union members, the ones who want two states. How could they ask for two states when Hamas and every Muslim country says they only want one state? I can't figure it out. I don't know if Frank can figure it out. I mean, they know the Muslims want one state, not a Christian state, not a Jewish state, only a Muslim state. Why are they supporting Hamas, Frank?
I think it has to go a little deeper than the issue itself. There has been a red-green alliance between hard leftists in the various parts of the world and Islamic extremists. And I think this is just a flexing of their muscles, they believe. And if you look at the governments of New Zealand, Canada, and the UK, upcoming France and Germany as well, this is the hard left flexing its muscles, just as a symbol of saying, we can do this. This is what we're all about. I don't think that they're going to succeed in getting a state. But I do think they're going to flex their muscles in those countries. If there are elections in those countries, I think conservatives are going to take over eventually in Canada, the UK. I'm not sure about New Zealand, but Germany and France, I think, or Germany in particular, might be on the brink as well. And I think this whole idea will be shot down. Whether that can be done, though, in time to prevent a state from being recognized, not established, but recognized, is a question we'll all have to watch for in the future.
Thanks, Frank.
So, Frank, before we let you go, how do we get in touch with you on social media, the websites, everything?
Well, it's at usagovpolicy.com, and you can use that to access, if you missed it on your local station, our radio show, our television show, and our latest research column.
Fantastic. Well, before we let Frank go, Dan, any more questions or comments or anything?
I just have a quick question. Who you got on the show this week, Frank?
Oh, we had a Judge John Wilson, the author of several books on the Trump administration, who was talking about the attempts by the left, or by the Trump administration, I'm sorry, to cast Antifa and Frente Agua as left-wing, as terrorist organizations, and what hurdles stand in place of doing that.
Right.
Interesting
Fantastic.
conversation, actually.
Fantastic. Well, Frank, thanks for doing this, my friend. We'll let you get on with the rest of your day, and we will have our rest of our show and our discussion here. Thank you, sir.
Looking forward to it. Take care, guys.
Appreciate it. There goes Frank Vernuccio from USA Gov Policy. And in this segment, me and Dan and IQ are just going to bat some things around. So I watched this this speech at the UN. Dan, what did you think about all that with the Trumpster?
Well, I think that, first of all, physically, he's a dominating presence. He's tall, broad-shouldered, strong-looking, unlike Biden, who is weak and feeble. So the leader of not only the United States, but the free world, has a presence, and he is not opposed to telling people exactly what the hell he thinks. And so we have a situation where he was basically somewhat politely, but not totally politely, criticizing the United Nations as an organization that he didn't use this, but my observation is he was basically saying to them, you stayed too long at the fair. You're not a functional and viable. In fact, you're doing things against my country, and I don't like it. And then after he finished the speech, he had talked about the possibility of encouraging them to move their headquarters someplace else. And and I don't know how serious he was at that, whether he was joking or whether he was true serious. We'll find out. But depending upon what the UN does, and indirectly, the European Union and NATO do to support providing arms and possibly personnel. And I think that that's a really important issue, Jim. If they put up the money to match what we're putting up, but they start putting boots on the ground in Ukraine to fight the Russians, that sends a very different message about their commitment to stopping the aggression of Russia. Not so much that they're supporting Ukraine, but stopping the aggression of Russia. That's a very serious piece of information that Mr. Putin's going to have to deal with relatively quickly.
So IQ, what do you think about all this?
All I know, America must never put any boots on the ground to defend anybody.
Yep.
That's all I'm telling you.
I
Every nation,
completely agree with you on that one.
every nation, they have. China has, sorry, Japan is a colossus economically. They can defend themselves. South Korea can defend themselves. They don't need 30,000, 40,000 American troops.
Yep.
Do they need? I mean, Israel never had a single soldier die in defense of Israel. But tens of thousands of Americans died either to defend Muslims or Arab countries. Can you believe that? It's true, though. Tens of thousands.
Because they got that oil. That's really what it comes down to. Because I seen a report the other day that supposedly solar-powered cars and trucks are on their way. And I'm like, awesome. Then we can take every kind of business that we have in the Middle East and bring everybody home and not even have to mess with this stuff anymore. Dan, go ahead, my friend.
I'm going to play devil's advocate, sir.
I was hoping you would, honestly.
Yeah. I understand. I understand the concern that IQ expressed for on his behalf, but other countries about they should never put boots on the ground again. Well, and he talked about China, and he talked about South Korea, and he talked about Japan, and you could throw in Australia and New Zealand and lots of other countries. Those countries in the far west are probably not going to ship their sons and daughters across the Pacific and the Atlantic to get to Ukraine to fight for the Ukrainian freedom or to stop the Soviet Union. I mean, they really haven't provided troops, period, in any of the conflicts after World War II. And yet we are really in a strange position, Jim. We have people like IQ, who I respect with great admiration, and I understand the idea that we don't want to put American boots on the ground. If that's true, Jim, why are we spending hundreds of billions of dollars to build the best military in the world?
But mostly on ships, submarines, missiles, and space war. That's
Right.
very important because these items cost billions, not millions, billions. Each aircraft carrier, 5 to 6 billion. Each missile ship, submarine, 5 to 6 billion. We're not talking about peanuts money. This is a huge amount of money.
No, but again, let me suggest that you take that in perspective. And the perspective is that our economy is about $24 trillion a year. The second largest economy in the world is China at somewhere between 11 and 12 trillion. So we are 2 times larger than the next largest economy in the world. We have the resources to do whatever it is we want to do. I understand the idea of aircraft carriers and submarines and missiles and space and all that stuff. And it's going to take personnel to operate those systems and get them and make them effective on a global basis. But I think that there's going to be a situation where the countries that we're going to be working with or working against, in the case of Russia, they've got nuclear missiles, and Pakistan and India have missiles, and other countries have nuclear weapons. I still think that we don't want to go to nuclear war. I hope and believe we don't want to go to nuclear war. And so and the rest of the world doesn't have the physical resources to build the fleets of spaceships and rockets and bombs and aircraft carriers and submarines that we have. But at some point in time, isn't enough of the hardware and if we're building it not to use it, how are we going to protect those countries that don't have the nuclear arsenals? I mean,
You're right.
Obama.
In Europe, you have NATO. I mean, for God's sake, you already have NATO. You have boots on the ground, or you have it in Germany. You have them in Italy. You have them in Spain. You have them.
Mhm.
All I'm saying is don't put them in Ukraine. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying anything else. Let the Europeans fight in Ukraine. They are the ones who instigated it in the first place.
See, but the point is, IQ, is that what you're saying, I understand, but let me give you an alternative word about what you're saying. You're preaching military isolationism for the United States. I don't want to get
Not at all.
involved. I don't want to get
Not
involved.
at all. No, sorry, not at all. Isolationist, America cannot be. It is impossible in the 21st century that America can be isolated. Nobody can be isolationist in 21st century. Nobody. Literally nobody. Each is responsible for everybody else now. Because we are connected. I mean, literally connected. We're connected militarily. We're connected economically. You name it, we're connected. So to be isolationist, it cannot be done. And it shouldn't be done.
But
Otherwise, why have sorry, go on.
if you have other nations who are also very reluctant, as Frank said, when the Russians sent the drones over Poland and the other countries, they weren't shot down by those countries. The Russians were invading the airspace of those sovereign nations, and they let them do it. They let them fly in, did whatever they wanted to do, and turn around and fly out. And they
Why did they let them fly? Why did they let them fly in? Why?
because
why? It's not an act of war.
they
It's not an act of
because
war shooting them down.
they did it because they don't want to go to war. They don't.
Oh, you mean it's all right for Russia to send them, but it's not all right for them to shoot it down? How is that logical?
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that they were intimidated by Putin and the military hardware of Russia, and were not willing to risk their military hardware to shoot down the drones because they were afraid. That's the operative word in my mind, afraid of escalating into something out of control.
It's the same thing as the European leaders are now supporting Hamas. Do you know why they're supporting Hamas? Because they are afraid of the monster they created in Europe.
Oh, I
They don't know
understand.
they don't know how to handle the monster they created in Europe.
Yes.
So what do? They say to Hamas, we support you. Bull
Right.
crap. It won't end. It never starts with the Jews and ends up with the Jews. Never. Hitler killed 6 million Jews and 19 million Christians in the concentration and the extermination camps.
Right.
It doesn't end up with the Jews.
The practical reality that we have to look at is that we have to look at history.
Okay.
And what we had in history in the European nations when they were dealing with Hitler, they were appeasers. They
All of
didn't,
them.
they didn't want to start a war. They didn't want to get involved. They were trying to convince that they could negotiate a peace settlement with Hitler and everything would be fine.
Okay.
They were unwilling to confront the evil of what he was and ultimately what he became to be, and would not have done it had not America got in the war. They would not have done it without America's resources, military personnel, hardware. If America was still at that time an isolationist nation and didn't want to get involved, if they let Hitler go on his blitzkrieg, they would not have attacked him, especially if America refused not to be involved. And I'm saying to you that that's what's going on now. We have European leaders who talk the big talk, but when it comes time to shooting down drones over Poland or Estonia or wherever else they not only are reluctant, they're afraid to pull the trigger to shoot them down because they don't know, they can't anticipate what the reaction is going to be by Putin and his military.
But this irony you just mentioned from history. So they haven't learned anything from history, have they?
They've learned, oh yeah, they learned that America saved their ass.
Okay, all right.
And that's
Yes.
still opportunity to save their ass is they're hoping that the Americans will come through. Now they come through with $350 billion worth of hardware, but they're dying by the thousands, both sides, Russia and Ukraine, and they don't have a limitless supply of military. But my guess is that the overall population and the fighting age of men and women in Russia is much greater than the available fighting men and women in Ukraine. And when Ukraine starts running out of bodies to be shot at, what's going to happen?
But European Union alone has more armaments than Russia. They have nuclear weapons. After all, England has nuclear weapons. France has nuclear weapons. It's not the number of nuclear weapons that's important. The fact that you have nuclear weapons is important. You don't have to destroy every city in the enemy country. You destroy Stalingrad, or sorry, Moscow, and any of the major cities. You don't have to destroy everything. So why are they afraid? Why have they not learned a lesson that if you appease terrorists, you will never win?
The reason why they haven't used those nuclear weapons that they have in boxcar loads is that they don't know where it's going to end up. Will it proliferate and that Russia will launch hundreds of nuclear weapons to the capitals in Europe and to blow up? You know, you're talking about surgical strikes against targets that have economic or emotional value to making Russia give up. And I'm saying that there are people in Europe, European leaders who are looking at it from the standpoint, if I pull the trigger and respond with nuclear weapons, even if it's tactical nuclear weapons with a low yield, but in a small, that it's going to escalate out of control because they can't control what's going on with their partners in Europe. And will the European Union, will those countries join together to attack Russia? They haven't so far, and their military spending, while a lot, is not anywhere near what we have spent in the United States. So there's a built-in reluctance there to get deeply involved in trying to stop the Russian bear. And I am very concerned that we're going to see a repeat of prior to World War II, when Chamberlain went to Britain, or went to Berlin to talk to Hitler, and supposedly got a signed agreement, which was violated within days after it was signed. And so I think that they're not cowards. They don't have a strong constitution, and they would avoid conflict at all possible hazard.
Before World War II, the Europeans sold Czechoslovakia to Hitler
Yes.
to satisfy him. Now they are
Tried to
selling
satisfy.
Israel.
Tried to.
Sorry?
They tried to appease him, but it didn't work. It wasn't going to work
Yeah,
from the day
okay.
when the day
Correct, that's what I'm saying. It didn't work. Okay. Now they're appeasing Hamas. Let me ask the question. These geniuses, the European leaders, do they honestly believe that if Israel's future is definitely sealed and they know that they're going to be destroyed, that Israel will not use nuclear weapons? I mean, are they out of their mind? Where are they coming from? Israel today is one of the most powerful nations on earth. Not many people mention her submarine fleet. You hear about the aircraft, you hear about the land forces, but nobody is mentioning the submarine fleet. They have one of the most sophisticated submarine fleets in the world. They have modified them to shoot nuclear weapons, ICBMs, and cruise missiles. And do you honestly believe if they are threatened existentially, they will not use them? There will be mushrooms all over North Africa and Asia, and in Europe also. If I'm coming down, it's a Samson option. I go down, everybody else goes down. They haven't thought about that? No, they haven't thought about that. They thought they appease Hamas only for a short period of time. They appease Hamas. Fantastic. In the meantime, their cities are being destroyed by the Muslims. Literally, as I'm speaking to you.
Yeah, so I think that where we had the axis of evil in World War II, we had the Germans, the Italians, and the Japanese. We have an axis of evil in Europe. We have the Russians and we have the Muslims. But
Yeah.
what's going on is that the Muslims are much deeper ingrained and invaded in the European nations, and the control of those and influence of those nations than they were ever than the Italians were in other European nations, or the Germans. Like they had to spend a tremendous amount of their military just trying to keep the people of Europe, the citizens in Europe, in check. And that's why there was such a brutal murder of millions and millions of people. They needed to intimidate the people. But I think that there are two evils that are not necessarily working together, but are creating an influence in Europe, and that's the Muslims and Russia.
The other thing that happened during the speech, which was remarkable, Trump said what I told you in my articles: the most persecuted people on the planet today are Christians.
Right.
Did you hear that?
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what he said.
Right.
He is the only one who ever said that of all the leaders of Europe. He's the only
Yes.
one.
Right. Right.
Yeah. But I've been saying it for years, literally in my articles, in my talk shows. The most persecuted people on the planet today, Christians by Muslims.
And part of the reason for that is that Christianity as we know it barely exists in Europe. We have so many millions of people who have abandoned the Christian churches in Europe for numerous reasons, but they're no longer engaged in a religion, a Christianity. They've become purely secular, and so the need to deal something about with the persecution of whatever Christians are left, or in Africa, is not as important to many of the Europeans today as it might have been 50 years ago.
Then my question is, why are they more concerned about the Gaza people and not the Christian people? Why are they more concerned about the Gaza people? What's the difference there?
The difference is the intimidation factor. The Christians that are remaining don't have the ability to intimidate the way the Muslims have intimidated around the world and are continuing to intimidate the leadership of these countries with threatening them with death and persecution and attacks and unrest in their communities and their countries. Christians don't do that.
Okay. So, but the Christians in these countries are, let's say, 90% or 85% of the population being threatened by 15% and 10%, and they take their pants down. Why?
Well,
you can't threaten me in my own home. You do that, I kill you. Simple. They don't want to. They want to threaten us. We destroy them. What's the big difficulty? Tell me, please. Where?
but IQ, look at America. We have far less than 15% of the population, especially on the Democratic left, who has tremendous power and influence and intimidation factor in the United States.
That's your fault. That's your fault in America. Sorry, with all due respect. I told you a million times, a Muslim cannot be both a loyal citizen and a good Muslim. It is illegal in Sharia. You can take them out immediately under the Department of the Justice. Immediately, no questions asked. They are against the American Constitution. Again, against America. They hate America. Again, they have to be removed from America. It's all legal. There's nothing, it's not discrimination, by the way.
Well,
there's nothing discriminating about it.
There was an article over the weekend out of London where Farage, is that how you pronounce his last name?
I believe so.
Who wants to ship all of the illegals that have come into England out as quickly as possible. He wants to get rid of them all, send them back to their home countries.
Why shouldn't he?
I'm not saying he should. I'm not saying he should.
Yeah, I know. Why is there anybody hesitating? Why is anybody hesitating? Why?
Because of the intimidation factor that we've been talking.
You keep saying about if you are threatening me, I'll come and kill you. What's the big difficulty? I don't understand.
What's the big difficulty? I don't understand.
But James, if I'm threatening you and you know I'm going to destroy you, you mean you will do nothing? Of course you will. Any intelligent human being would go the next morning early and kill the one who's threatening me.
But IQ, take England and take the United States. we have a president in the United States who opened the border, who let tens of millions of illegals from all over the world come into the country. The majority of the citizens disagreed with that, and I don't mean to be flippant, but so what? He didn't care what the American people thought. He was going to allow anybody and everybody to come into the United States from anywhere in the world.
That was Biden.
Well, but look at, on a much smaller scale, isn't that what happened in England? The English government allowed it to happen, didn't do anything to try and stop it.
But they're criminal. Anybody who does that is a criminal. I mean, you are just proving my point. They are treasonous criminals. I don't care if he's a prime minister or he's the president of the United States of America. If you have open borders and you allow illegitimate, illegal people to come and invade your nation, you are a criminal, you are a traitor. Biden should be put on trial and executed. I don't care. He's a president. Executed.
But my point, IQ, was that it was Biden and his team who made the decision that they wanted to open the borders and bring in millions of illegals because it was going to, they believed it was going to help the long-term political aspects and prospects for the Democratic Party to keep them in power.
Correct. I agree with you. But an act of treason doesn't mean it's justifiable. It's not justifiable. Mayorkas should be executed. He was also involved, and he kept saying the borders are secure. Come on, for God's sake, where are we? Are we playing games? I don't play games.
Thanks. Where are we?
I don't play games. You threaten
No,
me?
that is certainly something you don't play games in the past, what, 20 years of
14
this
years.
program.
We had
No,
a report
honestly,
from Kristi Noem over the weekend that 1.6 million illegals have self-deported in 243 days.
1.6 million?
1.6 million have self-deported in 243 days.
And it's not even 4 years done.
Right.
There will be more. There will be more. And
I-
I love what Trump said about ICE. He said, if they spit on you, if they threaten you, do whatever you need to defend yourself. I love that.
Mhm.
I love that. I mean, these morons, they cover their faces with keffiyehs and they complain that the eyes are covered. I mean, there is no logic anymore.
Well, we had the governor of California who got a piece of legislation passed in the California legislature that is ordering any government agent working in the state of California has to remove their mask. Now, the laws are very clear that the federal laws and the federal constitution supersedes the state constitution and the state law. I'm sure that Gavin Newsom knew that, but was looking for the opportunity to appeal to a group of people who hate Trump, and this is a way for him to show them that he cares about what's going on and that they should take off their masks and we should be able to see who they are and when they come in. And it's not enforceable. And in fact, Kristi Noem told all of the ICE agents and the other agencies, FBI, ATF, whatever, have all told their men and women, leave your masks on. You can't be prosecuted or arrested under this bogus California law. But the point is, we had a governor trying to decide of how things were going to be traded for the illegals that were in this country, when you got the president trying to get them out and you've got Gavin Newsom trying to keep them and interdict the ability of the military and the police to deal with the illegals that are in this country.
And how are you allowing such a creature to be a governor in America? I want to know. How
Because
is it? What? But again, you tell me some legal bullcrap? What?
we
He's
have
a
it,
traitor.
we have it because we have a system that is not, remember that the Constitution says, and I quote, in order to form a more perfect union. Not that we have a perfect union, but in order to try and form a more perfect union. The document was written to try to be the roadmap for governments and individuals to understand what was going on. And so we do have the ability for even elected governors to have an opinion and to act on that opinion. And we have a process in our Constitution that allows that person to do it, but also subject to the rules and regulations and reviews and critiques and charges by going to the court system to have those particular things overturned. Look at all the suits that came in when Trump first came into office on executive orders and other things that wound up going to the Supreme Court because the lower courts, the district courts, sided with the Democrats and stop trying to stop Donald Trump's agenda. We have the ability to do that in our country because it's built into our Constitution. And people have the right to make an ass out of themselves, but they have to pay the price for doing that.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. Yeah, why not? I agree with you. But the Constitution, as you said, the federal government overrules the state. He knows that the federal government overrules the state, but the jackass is still doing it.
Right.
And this is the guy who wants to be president in 2028.
Yes.
I mean, he is a failed human being, failed physically, failed mentally, failed economically, and a traitor. And
But
he
you
wants to
have
be president.
IQ. I don't know. I can't speak about Europe. I can't speak about the United States. We have people in this country who come from long generational lines who have never voted for the man or the woman, but voted for the initial after their name. D for Democrats, R for Republicans, I for independents. And so we have people who don't care whether Gavin Newsom is the right person or not. He's got a D after his name, and they will vote for him because he is a Democrat. Regardless of what his policies are and his philosophy is, he will get their vote because he's a Democrat.
Fine. I agree with you. That's 38% of the American stupid animals. I know. I've always said it. 38% are dedicated, stupid animals. I understand that. But you have 62%. They are the ones who will decide. And God willing, after what happened to Charlie Kirk, things will have to change. And they are
Right.
changing.
I agree.
The new generation of young Republicans
Yes.
in the universities are taking the universities to court. They're taking their professors to court, and they're challenging their teachers, which never happened before.
Right.
They're actually challenging their teachers and taking them to court. And that's how it should be. You're
Absolutely.
right. You
I
have a
agree.
constitution. You have to follow the rule of law. I love it. I know it bothers me because it takes time, but it doesn't bother you because time is not relevant. You
Right.
want to do the constitution.
Right. Jim, I have to
Well-
run to a meeting, so can we wrap this up?
Yes. Let's wrap this up. Dan, before we let you go, how do we get in touch with you online and everything you've got going on, my friend?
The books are available at Amazon.com or through your local bookstore. Dan Perkins Media is my television work. AMFM 24/7 is the radio work. And danperkins.guru is commentaries and other news and what's going on. And I just finished the 32nd chapter in the book that I'm working with, and I'm starting a new book at the same time. So I'm going to try and write 2 books at the same time.
Oh, wow. Well, IQ, where do we find your books, my friend? And then we'll let everybody go for the day.
Lifting the Veil, The True Faces of Muhammad and Islam is on Amazon, and anybody who wants to Google it, just Google IQ al Rassooli, and you'll find everything.
Fantastic.
Dan Perkins, it's a pleasure meeting you again. Same thing with James, and I'll see you on Thursday.
I will see you on Thursday, and Dan, I'll see you next Tuesday. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Bye.